You're listening to Masters Decoded podcast series. I'm your host and the chief decoder, Anis Merchant. Through this podcast, I bring in guests who are successful in a different walk of life to decode and map out their careers and journeys with the hope that we gain all our learnings. The world around us is changing exponentially, and how the impact of artificial intelligence, technology, and other socio-economic factors have either influenced or enhanced my guests' careers. Today's guest is Ronny Sequeira. In the photography world is a name that is known to frame brands in the correct line of sight. Yes, most often with a celebrity that lends to the aura. His work for Adidas, LG, Yamaha, Lay's, Pepsi, Toyota, Sonata Watches, Toshiba, Philips, Microsoft, Mountain Dew, ESPN, Kit Kat, Gold's Gym, Pizza Hut, and many other brands speaks that over the years. He started off making it to the Society's Young Achievers Award in 2000. In 2008, he made it to the India Top 10 Indian Photographers list, and since has been creating epochal moments with superstars as enigmatic as Amitabh Bachan, Mahendra Singh Dhoni, Sachin Tendulkar, Saif Ali Khan, Kareena Kapoor, Juhi Chawla, Parineeti Chopra, and many more. With 20 years of experience in advertising photography, he still has the same desire as when he was a 10-year-old, using his dad's reflex camera to shoot his pet Alsatian. He's happiest behind a camera or astride his Triumph motorcycle exploring the country. Ronny and I share common passions, bikes and cigars. Listen in and get dazzled with his career journey. Hey Ronny, welcome to the Masters Decoded podcast series. Really thankful for you to doing this, but for the benefit of the audience, if you have to take a step ahead and say, okay, how your 20 years of experience has been and what you're doing right now, I think that will be benefit for the larger group.
Yeah. So thank you for having me over, and always a pleasure to do stuff for my dear buddies. 20 years, yeah, it's been a long while, but it's been a amazing roller coaster ride. Series of ups and downs, but overall fantastic journey. And I think at some level, it's like a motorcycle ride, right? So you start off, there are brilliant parts. Suddenly you get a puncture. You got to go through that. So it's like a motorcycle ride. It's great. We still enjoy it.
We'll talk about motorcycles also as we move. I think that's a common thread between the two of us.
That's right.
So, this motorcycle, and you spoke about it, is that how you refer that as a learning, or is it something else which you've been in this space?
No. So learnings which I've learned are like a few. So I think the first one is just simple hard work and focus. No substitute for hard work. I mean, if you can't work hard, these lines are not for you. You can't get away. Focus literally as a photographer. But while you're doing that particular job, if you're not focused on that, obviously the end result is not going to be too great. You always have to be on top of your game. So whether it's technology, equipment, knowledge always is changing. And I'm learning from my boys even today. So we've recently bought a gimbal, which is something with video. I've not learned it. And I'm telling myself, okay, I'm going to learn it in the next 10 days, because finally I got to learn it for myself, right? And the most important thing as a photographer or as a director or anything in the media, I think, is you're as good as your last job. If your last job is not good enough, the client is always going to be saying, hey man, he did a better job last time. So an example is we've been shooting for PC Chandra Jewelers a lot. First job went fantastic. Second job went even better. Third job is even better. So, they always come back to you. But if you bring it down like even a 10% and the client sees that, they're probably going to consider someone else.
It's tough, right, to constantly evolve your benchmark.
Yes and no. So for me, I've actually come up looking up to my mom and dad My mom was the first lady to win an Arjuna Award for
Wow.
athletics, yeah, so in 1964. And the hard work comes from there. One thing I realized that at some level, you know, she was doing stuff even when she was probably 50. I mean, of course, not running and stuff, but doing stuff related to athletics, teaching kids and stuff. And it never ends. So, I mean, my take is that if you're constantly trying to make a better version of yourself, even if it's not directly related to your profession, that's good enough.
Very interesting. So, and we'll touch about your family and how's that influenced your career. But let's say, since we started with motorcycles, you get a motorcycle which is almost like a time machine, the Avengers time machine. And if you have to go back 20 years and hit rewind or say, okay, can you do this in 10? You've done it in 20 years and you've been successful. How and what would you think? And first of all, would you be able to do it in 20 years or 10 years? Or do you think it will take more or it will take less?
Uh, well, I mean, I always have been working hard, so there's no people don't see that side. Actually, it's quite funny, but you tend to get a little easy if you, let's say, do a few big months. That's the problem with our professions. So whether you're an actor, whether you're a director, you're a photographer, you do a month where you've killed it and you've made like a decent amount of money. And if it's 2 months back to back, then you're like, okay, the next 4 months I can chill literally because the type of money you make is decent. So I wouldn't do that. I would still say, okay, fine, get up and go and do your job. Uh, I would meet more clients, which I've been redoing now after many years. It's just the connect. People know me. People have seen my work. But let's say I go into an agency where I know the creative director, who's the main guy there, and he gets his 10 bachas and they have seen my work. They know of Ronny Sequeira, but they've not seen his work. They've not interacted with the man. And that's making a big difference. So suddenly in the last 1.5 years, I've been doing that more. And work's been coming.
Great. And that's good for you. The work is coming. Uh, is that your learning or that something which you feel you should have done that in your yesterday
I could
years?
have done that a lot more. Yeah. You tend to get carried away. So it's like, in your youth, you do a lot of brash things. Like one of the worst things I did was maxing out my Amex card all the time and thinking that, it'll all be taken away and be sorted. And then you realize that those are not good things. So, I mean, like 3-4 years back, like totally maxing out that 4.5 lakh limit. That's not a good thing because at some level, you realize that it's going to come back and bite you. Now, those things have stopped. But what I did realize is during that time, right, I could have also been using my credit card, but going out and meeting people. And, the work balance would have always been there. But you tend to get carried away a little bit sometimes in these professions.
So, if I have to sum up, or if I have to kind of just hear, or probably what you just said, financial acumen and meeting people and building relationships were the two big learnings, if you think about it?
Not so much financial because I've never had like a stress. It's just that, you go through that thing that you say, okay, fine, let's keep that credit card only when it's really required.
Okay.
No, it's more about connecting with people. It's as simple as that. You connect with people and, it just the work multiplies.
Great. And you spoke about gimbal.
Yeah.
Right? And your objective is that you have to learn it now in the next 10 days.
Yeah.
And if I look at photography as a technology, let me put my hand up right now and said, even probably 10 years or 15 years ago, I also thought I may become a photographer. I bought a lot of, you spoke about money. I also wasted a lot of money in buying devices. I didn't buy a professional, but I did buy a lot of point and shoot and a lot of devices around it. And when I look back and that product is still sitting at my home and it's outdated.
Yeah.
The technology is evolving. So in your line, specifically technology is evolving. Today, you hear about 108 megapixels, 64 megapixels, and the devices are getting smaller. And I still remember the photographers had large devices. They had almost like they had carrying cases just for their photography unit. So how do you think technology has evolved and constantly challenges what you are doing in today?
So in fields like photography, technology is always going to be a big part. And let's say whatever the camera be, whether it's a 20-year-old camera or a camera that you've just bought today, you still need to know the functions. A lot of people buy the camera and they don't know their functions. I mean, I can compare it with buying a high-end Ferrari or any top-end car,
Or a Harley
and
Davidson bike.
not Harley, but not using it to its full capability,
Mm-hmm.
because these cameras are so intelligent that if you don't know to use them, they're actually being counterproductive. So you would rather have something more simpler and still get a good image. But yeah, I mean, I feel that at some level, it's very important to know the functions, the softwares that processes the images, because the softwares are constantly updating. Of course, today we have something called Capture One, which has been there with us for the last about 8-10 years, and that is it. So if you know Capture One inside out, you're sorted. But it keeps upgrading, so you got to know that. And whatever channels of internet you're using, whether it's social media, whether it's transferring files to the client, you have to be updated there. So that's where the technology actually comes in. So when my boys come in today, I don't just ask them about whether they know about cameras and stuff, but I also ask them, hey, can you send files by WeTransfer? Do you know a bit of Photoshop, or do you know Capture One? Some of them do know Capture One. Uh, but I still feel that once the basics are sorted, which I think most guys do, it comes down to producing good images. So if you have all the technology, the most high-end camera, and still can't produce a good image, I think it's pointless.
And as I said, I invested, and there was a big learning which I had, which kind of made me realize I'm not made for this. And I still capture a lot of pictures. I like to capture moments. But one thing which every job has, but this job has a significant one, which is creativity. And how do you build your frame, and how do you think about what you're framing in? So how much importance do you feel? Because to your point, there are many photographers in India and worldwide, and the difference is that creativity which brings in. And how do you feel, and how do you enhance that on a day-to-day basis, as well as teach or train people on that?
Yeah, so it's a simple word, but I think it's a little overrated, creativity. Uh, so, so if I were to pull back and look at my mom's journey as a creative person, other than the fact that she was a sportsman, was she was very good with gardening, and she would do a lot of interesting stuff in the garden, as well as she would make. During Christmas, we make this thing called cribs,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a lot of learning there for me, and a lot of aesthetic also. Now, at some level, I would say that contributed a lot, because even today I make cribs with my kids, do a bit of gardening. But I think creativity also comes down to hard work, as simple as that. So I'll give you an example. Today morning I was shooting, someone gave me a bottle of a good malt, and I said, let me take a picture of it. So the light is good. Obviously, I'm using my phone camera and stuff. But I didn't take one picture, I took about 8. Then from those 8, I selected which one is good. I took 3 of them, did 3 different looks, and first showed it my daughter because I value her judgment. Then I showed it another friend of mine who's also in advertising. And I took opinions, because at some level, I mean, they're all good looking, but let's take opinions. Now that's where creativity comes in, that when I'm shooting a campaign and I'm doing my own thing, I'll still have a creative director beside me, and he's my bouncing board. Now, a lot of people don't have that little initial influence. So let's say today my daughter and son are constantly. So my daughter says, "Hey, Dad, I shoot some great pictures of my friends, but I don't get good pictures." I say, "See, even though you have an iPhone 4, you're still learning from Dad." So I think, yeah, it does matter if there's a bit of background and grounding, but you can always learn. There's books, there's internet, there's hanging out with the right people. I think that's important.
Very interesting. So you speak about phone, and you refer phone a lot today. And there's a lot of these Instagrammers who click amazing pictures. I somewhere feel technology is influencing a lot of that creativity rather than. So what's your perspective? Do you see that as a disruption today? A lot of people just with simple phone, point and shoot, click.
No, I think it's beautiful actually, because at some level, uh, I'm a big iPhone fan, and even though I use a simple, humble iPhone 6, I'm very happy with the results. But if I go into a party and I know that I'm expected to click the pictures, I announce, hey, iPhone X kiske paas hai? So JD, Pranav, all of them, hey, mera le, mera le. So the bottom line is that if I have a high-end iPhone, I can do fabulous work in that given circumstances, and I'll be more comfortable shooting with that vis-a-vis a camera which I'm going to be lugging around, even if it's a small camera. So the era of the point and shoot, I think, is over. Nobody has point and shoots anymore because the iPhones are fantastic, or some of the other phones also. But the reason I like the iPhone is that it's just, I mean, there's a certain amount of, I wouldn't use the word smoothness also, but feel to the images, which the others don't give you, you know. So, I mean, I can swear by an iPhone. Give me an iPhone 10 any day to shoot anything, you know, and it can do as good a job as most of the point and shoots.
So have you actually done a shoot with a phone?
No, not really. None of my commercial work will ever allow me to do that. But there was this video I had seen where they had used, this was a long time back, where they shot a Bentley car with an iPhone, but that was more just to show what the iPhones can do.
Yeah.
But they were shot by professionals. They had a lot of gimbals. They had a lot of cheats, if I would use a term. Would I use an iPhone for commercial work? No.
So today there are a lot of people who probably are thinking of starting. In fact, the studio we are sitting in is a studio which is imbibing and teaching creativity to a lot of upcoming marketing professionals today. So what do you feel about, and what if you have to give an advice to somebody who's thinking about starting their career in photography? How would you balance creativity and technology, and how much you spoke about those basics of photography also? How much emphasis would you imply on that?
Yeah. So I think a lot of people want to do a lot of things with photography, but they don't have the foundation. So I would use the word the ABCDs. So the first thing I would suggest is buy an SLR. I know today mirrorless are in and stuff like that, but I still feel an SLR is a little bit more a solid grounding to learn from, you know, and buy a book. Most people think that there's everything on the internet. There is, but it's all haphazard. So you'll have an A, suddenly you'll have a G, suddenly you'll have a Z, then you'll come back to M. No, you have to go A, B, C, D, E, F, G, right? So a lot of the assistants who come in, the first question I ask them is, do you know the aperture scale? And they're clueless. You know, they'll say things like 8.3. You know, it's there in the cameras, but in the good old cameras, you would have a 2.8, 4, 5.68. So, you know, I teach them those things. So a book really makes you understand because the photos are there and it's all written there clearly. Then today there are a lot of photography courses which are there available in Mumbai, in Pune, Ooty, I think in Goa also. But even if you do a basic course, what it does, it just clears a lot of your initial questions, which is very important before you work with the photographer. The third most important thing is assist any photographer, but not any, someone whose work you admire and of course who is at some level. So if you're lucky enough to work with someone who is among like the top of his game, you don't have to go through assisting one guy and another guy. So people have done that. I know photographers who are very big today, but they worked with an interior photographer 2 years and then said, hey, this is not my cup of tea. And they came and worked with a fashion photographer. So I wouldn't say they wasted those 2 years, but that learning could have been accelerated if they had just straight away come to the photographer who they really wanted to work with, you know. So find a photographer, work with him. You'll have to be a slave, but that's okay.
So you spoke about a book. What book would you recommend to the audience?
Oh, there's a lot of Bibles for me. I've had a lot of what you call basic books. So one of the classics is called the 35mm Handbook. I don't think you'll get it so easily unless you get some second-hand ones. A book which I still have is called the Kodak Book of Photography. You get versions of that. It's brilliant. I had that book when I was in the 12th standard. I still have it. When I joined Atul, who I worked with, who was my mentor, he had a book called Uptown and Uptown. So that's the authors. And I have that book and I swear by that book. So Atul also told me that if you start this book from back to front and you know everything in it, that's it. You don't need to do a course.
Amazing. So you did do a course though, right, in your initial years?
Yeah. So the courses that I did were just stepping stones to me saying, okay, fine, I'll be a professional. I was in Ferguson College, first year. There was an evening course for photography. And the reason I did it was because I was obviously interested in photography. but it sort of put me into it continued the journey. Like there was no gap. So I've come out of school doing photography. We're doing a bit of black and white printing. Uh, then come into college, do the same thing, but we do it under like more professional guidance. And then you're hanging out with that crowd. So people are shooting on weekends, discussing. And I clearly remember in my journey from first year to third year, I would do these mini portfolios, catch a guy and say, listen, I'll shoot a roll. Would you want some pictures? They're happy. And then there would be this contest in Pune Times where I would give my pictures and suddenly I was winning. And I still remember this one little very encouraging line which said that, hey, if talent like this is encouraged, maybe they'll make Pune proud. And I still have that cutting.
Nice. Have you framed it?
No. That's too much work.
Okay, great. So was that the favorite moment of your career, or has there been?
No. So those are stepping stones, if I were to use a word. In fact, an interesting part which I probably have not discussed is it started with my dad, because my dad was a very avid photographer, and he had maybe a couple of cameras, and the camera that I still have, which is where I learned my photography on, was gifted to my mom in Japan in the 1964 Olympics. And
Wow.
that was a beautiful camera. I'm forgetting his name right now, but it was a viewfinder camera, and I still remember shooting a black and white roll of my dog.
Does it click still?
No, it's in a few pieces. Yeah. But I still have it. It's like a mantelpiece.
Definitely.
But because Dad shot a lot, I was influenced, and for me it came down to saying, okay, Dad is giving me that bandwidth and the flexibility. And we also had something very interesting in Jamshedpur in Telco, where I grew up. It was called the Hobby Center. The Hobby Center was an interesting concept for all the kids. There was aero modeling, there was electronics, but they had a photography department which had 6 enlargers, and you could print. So it was magical. Imagine a 10-year-old going in and saying, hey, wow, this print suddenly from white paper becomes a print. So that was also a learning curve, and that was a little journey which a lot of us boys, I think there's about 5, 6 of us who are into, of course, I became a professional, but all of them are at my level in terms of if I talk to them on photography, they know their shit, yeah.
Amazing. So, and you speak about your parents and how they have influenced your career in many ways.
Yeah.
Uh, when you decided that you want to be a photographer, were they okay with it, or
Totally fine.
Totally fine?
Yeah. So if I were to put it bluntly, maybe my dad was slightly proud also. Of course, he had no clue the type of monies that the photographers make, because, I mean, we are staying in a small place, which at that point of time, people had no clue what is happening in the outside world. In fact, I met a friend of my dad who was a photographer once upon a time, then became a tailor, which was also very interesting. So when I met Uncle after I had come back after my 3 years working with Atul, he said, so what are you doing? So I said, Uncle, I'm becoming a photographer. Oh, even I did a bit of photography, but it's you put a flash on the camera and you shoot, and But then when I told him the type of monies we make in a day, he almost fell off his chair. He's like, what? So there was people had no clue at that point of time.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, Dad, in fact, was not just, he was very encouraging, right to the point where I still remember I had a point and shoot Canon, which obviously had a bit of a zoom, but it was not an SLR. And he was very perceptive that, I wanted an SLR. So he went one holiday back to Pune, and he met his brother who had an SLR, exchanged that camera with him and brought it and gave it to me. That was like a really happy, proud moment, because when you're on the 8th standard and get an SLR, and the good thing was the meter didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a lot of judgment. But then, you're reading books and stuff like that. So even today, today of course is very simple, but if I had a film camera, I can shoot without a meter because I know what the light is there. So yeah, Dad helped a lot. I think there was never a thing of, hey, why do you want to become a photographer? Always encouragement.
So you spoke about the meter and meter not being there, and you have to get into a mental zone to shoot. You spoke about your morning shoot of the malt. How do you prepare for a shoot? What goes in, and how do you build up to that? And you choose to shoot people versus normal
so
elements also, right?
No, so I mostly shoot people.
Okay.
That's my forte. But it's not like I can't shoot other stuff. It's finally an aesthetic.
Yeah.
And it's finally knowing your light. It's technical. It is very technical. But when I do my regular shoots, there's a lot of lighting design. So what I do is I sit down with my assistants, take a piece of paper. I did technical drawing in my ICSE. So I'm very good with doing isometric views and stuff like that. So I draw it out and I tell them, okay, this is where your light is, this is your lighting. And there is something called lighting ratios.
Mm-hmm.
I put it down there also. So the guys get a clear idea as to what I'm expecting from them. So they go in about 2 hours before I'm there and they loosely set it up. If the guy's experienced, he probably comes 90% to what I want. I just tweak it. And what is happening there is those guys are learning what Ronny can do. And I'm totally fine with it. And because they're taking care of all those technicalities, when I arrive on set, I can then focus on the set sometimes because that can be not fully ready. Even art direction. Hey, do you want this vast there and stuff like that? That's my call. Styling. The stylist will come and say, hey, what do you think? This is looking good and stuff. So because I can focus on the other aspects, because my boys are taking care of this, I have overall more control in the shoot. And that's your job ultimately.
Sure.
You got to get your makeup correct, and there are sometimes the makeup artist is not too confident. They're expecting you to give your inputs and your experience there. So once that is taken care of, I come back to my lighting, and of course I am constantly checking back. So I'll be jumping from the makeup room to the styling room to back to the set, and my boys, and then they show me one, like, I won't call it a Polaroid, but one shot on the computer. And once it's good, we call the model in, and then we're ready to roll.
So the reason why I touch the difference between an object and a human being, human beings have their own background in terms of how they would like to get clicked. Like as an individual who clicks his family, I always get, I would tell my child or I'd tell my wife or anybody else, stand like this. They don't want to do that. They want to do something else. So they are in a different mood, but I want to click a different mood. So how do you get people aligned to what you want to get out? Right?
Yeah. So if I'm shooting professional models, they listen to me.
Sure.
There can be issues with sometimes a lack of connect. So sometimes I shoot this very good-looking guy called Lucky, and poor Lucky doesn't understand English.
Okay.
So when I'm talking to him English, he doesn't get it. He smiles at me. Then I tell him in Hindi. Sometimes he doesn't get it there also because it's a little slow. But yeah, I think professional models, no issue. They listen to you. It gets interesting when you get into celebs, because sometimes celebs, most celebs actually listen to me. But if the celeb is a celeb I'm shooting for the first time, they might have this issue, hey man, that light is too harsh and stuff. Like we were shooting with Siddharth for Bill Cream, and I was using a light called the HMI, which I normally don't use. And the light was harsh. So he's like, Ron, the light is hitting me in the face. It's too hard. I said, but if I take that light away, that the whole mazza of the shoot is going to go. So he accepted. But it gets more tricky when you're shooting friends and family, which I agree. So recently we were doing a shoot with a friend who's just had a baby. And, he had a certain image in his mind, which I think he had downloaded from the net, and he wanted me to do that. And he wanted to do it his way. And I said, no problem, we'll do it. So in that situation, it comes down to people skills. I'm very good with people. So I shot what he wanted. Then I said, let me do my own thing. And I think it comes down to people handling in this.
So, Ronny, we'll just touch upon a topic which you touched, and if you may, I would like to kind of go back to it. You did speak about your dad and how he played a big role of giving you the first SLR, of exchanging that. And you spoke about that moment that was the most happiest. Now, that's something which built your career further. Now, when you think about from a career perspective, have you had situations where, you feel that has made or that has kind of stemmed your choice that, yes, this is the career I really want to further develop?
Yeah, so I would actually define it more as my high points. So the more, you get that. So I would say as the favorite moment of a career as opposed to the growth, because I was already doing interesting stuff. So the first one was in 2006 and 7, when very interestingly we shot the entire cricket team, not the entire, but at least about 7 of them in Jamshedpur, the place where I grew up. And it was quite funny because initially it was going to be Calcutta. Suddenly the client say, no, the match is happening in Jamshedpur, so we got to shoot in Jamshedpur. So called up my dad, who was still there, and I said, Dad, I need a location. So dad organized the location, the stay of the agency for me, and at some level he actually was the producer because
Wow.
the clothes were already there, makeup was already organized. I think someone had organized that, but for me that was a high moment because you're going in with these 7-8 cricketers. There was a big team from the agency, and dad of course very proudly managing everything. So that was a great high. uh, the next one, when I flew down to London in 2012, literally one evening before the shoot, because I got my visa that evening to shoot Sachin for Toshiba. And the reason we were shooting him was because, of course, he was there for Wimbledon. But even more challenging was the fact that I went with no assistant, no lighting. I had only carried my camera from here, but we had hired a lighting guy who came in with his 5 lights. And you also realize the level of professionalism. The guy just set it up. I tweaked it, shot with Sachin. No art director, because the art director also not got his visa. And they loved the picture. So, that was another high because you're going in completely alien territory, shooting, doing something completely out of your comfort zone, because normally I go with 5 assistants.
Wow.
So, these two, and plus London, right? First time I was traveling to London, it was beautiful.
Great. And since you spoke about London, I kind of want to touch base. I believe in your formidable years when you started off, you went to US and I believe you went to Vegas, if I have read it somewhere. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Or Las Vegas?
No, Las Vegas. Yeah. So that was while I was assisting, and very coincidentally, that was in '95. Went with Atul, and with Atul was another photographer today who I respect a lot, Tarun Khiwal, and we were both assistants to him. So we went down to LA, and we actually drove down to a place called Mammoth, which was a ski resort, and we came back to LA, and we were in Santa Barbara and New York. So a lot of quick exposure to these great places. Bought myself a first expensive book from, I think, LA. Went to the famous B&H, which is the store in the world in New York. With a certain amount of money, I said, I only have $200. That's all I'm going to spend.
Yep.
So, great journey. I think that was a good starting point,
You speak about B&H. I've been always wanting to go to B&H, and this year, in fact, I went there and I told them that this is almost like a dream place where you can almost spend an entire day.
It is.
It's beautiful. It's just like you need not have an hobby for sound or photography, but you can just ogle over the devices and the products.
It's like a museum, man. It's like a museum because you get everything there.
Yeah.
The only thing is they're a little rude. So I still remember saying, listen, I want to buy a cable release, the ones that you press with the cable to. So I said, can I see a few options? He's saying, no, here's the catalog. You decide which one you want based on money and everything. It's all written there. Then I realized why. Because they don't have so much of staff. It all comes. There's a guy who puts it into a full trolley system.
Yes.
I don't know if that still exists.
It still exists.
Yeah. And this time I went to Sammy's Camera in San Francisco, but nowhere close to B&H. Nowhere close to B&H, yeah. So B&H is like a mecca. Yeah.
Yeah. No, in fact, you speak about customer experience has changed a lot. At least I have seen.
I'm pretty sure,
Yeah.
That was 95, so we're talking of like
25
years back, yeah.
So, you did speak a lot about these moments which, specifically where your dad was a producer, and that's beautiful. That story is just amazing. If you kind of take back and look back, has there been any shoot which you really think of and it gives a smile on your face? It's one of your best beautiful ones.
Yeah, so I'll go back to the London shoot because it was a lot of fun, and it was a high because you're literally traveling straight into the shoot. So from the airport straight into the shoot Sachin Tendulkar, lighting is coming from outside. So it also was beautiful settings in London somewhere, and so that was a high. But I think whenever I do a fashion shoot abroad, that's always fun because you have a team of 7-8 models, you have a styling team, you have a makeup team, you have a production team. So the crowd would be anywhere between 25 to 30 people, and you're literally the captain of the ship. Of course we have a clear idea as to what we're doing, But all decisions finally have to be made by me, so it's a great high again, And then if you're in like Bangkok or Cape Town, you're just having fun also, and the weather's good. So yeah, those have always been the high points. We do 5% fashion, so that's where we get the kick. Otherwise,
Sure.
we're doing commercial work, which is also okay.
Great, great. And any quirky stuff which you would like to share? Because, you come across these shoots and, there are a lot of things which get captured and not captured.
Yeah, there've been a lot of quirky stuff. We were once shooting models in bikinis for Bacardi, and this was here in Mehboob, only in Bombay. And we had to shoot them. So initially the thought was fully naked, but we couldn't shoot fully naked. So they were all wearing string bikinis or very small, like very, very less clothing. And they were all jumping on a trampoline. And I still remember the makeup artist comes up to me and says, so one of the girls was actually a guy, we didn't know it. And every time the jump would happen, this guy would go in, and so the guy was like, he goes to adjust. I'm like, oh, okay.
What did you say? What did you say?
So it's you have these little quirky moments. So it was quite fun. Yeah, yeah,
Fun.
yeah.
Yeah. No, these, you often don't get to hear that. The fun which you said, there's a lot of interesting fun which happens. So, in the same breath of this entire conversation, you've referred Atul a lot.
Yeah.
Would you consider him as your mentor, or are there people who've come in life?
I learned everything from him, as simple as that. So if I owe my photography career to one man, it is Atul. There's no doubt about it. I also joined him at a beautiful time. He was not so known then, which was a good thing. He was just getting into the limelight. And I still remember in the 3 years that we worked with him, he actually transitioned from... So he was not doing foreign shoots till then, but when we joined him, or when I joined him, I still remember there was Mauritius, there was Cape Town, then, of course, the biggest one, the US. But the bottom line is that he was doing very interesting stuff. So we've shot cars. My first shoot with him to Delhi was the Maruti Zen shoot. We shot ice creams, and ice cream outdoors, which is even more challenging.
They melt.
They melt like in no time, yeah.
Especially in a weather like in India.
But yeah, we were shooting in Hyderabad, I remember. But
wow.
because at that point of time, he was doing all genres of photography, our learning curve was bigger than the people who came in maybe 5 years later. Because then he was only people and celeb. And sometimes you tend to, once you've made it, you can tend to go easy and do what I'll define as your formula lighting. Even I do it now, because the clients know that Ronny will deliver. But you don't really come out of that comfort zone.
Yep.
So it was a great learning experience, but I also have had two other guys in my journey. There's a guy called Tarun Khiwal, who's pretty big in Delhi right now. And he was not there while Atul was there, but we did this one US trip where he was also the assistant and we hung out a lot. He's been a mentor on a different level, not just in terms of basic equipment talk and stuff, but also, pep talk sometimes. When I'm low, he'll say, okay, listen, this is what you got to do. And the other guy is Ajay Salvi, is very technical. I'll call him even now and, have a drink with him. So these guys have been my seniors, but I would, at this point of time, call them my mentors more than Atul, because I'm not so much in touch with Atul. But these guys, I'm on a touch, almost on a 1 month, once in 2 months, I'm in touch with them. So
Great. It's always good to have more people to look up to. So you just teach, when the first question when I said it's almost like a motorcycle, you referred. So if I have to ask you, what's Ronny in professional life? There's a lot of glimpses which you shared. Ronny in real life, is there a parity, or do you put your cape on when you go for a professional shoot, or is the same Ronny in real life?
No, the same, because at some level, I can't be a two-faced. Yeah. So in real life, I'm a very fun person, very high energy, positive, and a lot of guys define me as life of the party, which is a good thing.
Great.
I drink a lot, so that's good.
Yep.
Professionally, I'm still very high energy, positive, but the fun can sometimes be thrown out when things don't move according to what I'll define as perfectionist standards.
Mm-hmm.
So that would mostly be with my assistants, because if I'm doing a shoot and everything is perfect and they don't realize that. So the last shoot with PC Chandra, we were doing a shot where the model was moving and I was firing, and I knew that there's going to be a blur, and you can't have blurs in a jewelry. And I've done the entire shoot. I say, okay, it's good. the guy is watching the screen, he can see the blur, and he's not informing me. Either he can't see it or he's too scared to tell me, either of which doesn't work, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the models have gone in to change, and suddenly I'm reviewing the pictures. I'm saying, hey, they all blurred. I lost it. And that can cloud because I lost it, and then everybody in the room just like they try to hide. Because I had to call the models back and reshoot, which is fine. But my thing is that the boy who's sitting there is also a 2B photographer. He knows that if I'm shooting at a shutter speed of 30 and 60, which is not a very high shutter speed,
Yep.
there is going to be blur. So why didn't he see it? I don't know. He was just being probably lazy, lackadaisical, doesn't really care. But that doesn't work because, you can't have jewelry blurred. But when I get into those moments, it gets a little scary. But that's okay. I think it's good to have that reputation.
Sure, you need to have a dial which is not fixated
Yes.
in your
yes.
career. So, Ronnie, the interesting part of your profession is you're not a videographer, you're a photographer, where you're catching a lot of still. And pictures do tell 1,000 words. And in a video, you can express and emote a lot of emotions. But in a picture, it's just, like you said, the blur. If you miss it or if you don't capture it, you've not captured that moment, right? How do you get that perfect emotion, perfect click? How does that come across? How do you enhance that? Because sometimes you may have had models or celebrities who are known as their demeanor a certain way, and you're asking them to change their emotions in a very different way. How do you get into that?
So I think there are two halves to this. The first half is about understanding when to literally press the shutter. That's very important. The great Bresson had a word coined for this called the decisive moment. Now, I don't do street photography, but in street photography, there is definitely a decisive moment. So if you're doing photojournalism, it's that moment when everything comes together. That was Bresson's decisive moment. Now, if you're shooting a model in a studio against a plain background, there aren't many other factors, just the model and you, and the lighting, of course, is already there. But even there, you can have that moment which can make a great image or just an ordinary one. And there was a time when I started out where I used that philosophy where I don't remember the photographer, but he said, while you're looking through the camera and you're clicking and you've seen that pose before, you've seen that movement before, don't shoot it, try something else. So I would really push the model to go out of that comfort zone. But coming to celebs, it can get tricky because celebs can be very hard-nosed. Very good example is the great Sachin Tendulkar. We were shooting him for Boost, and the layout meant that he needed to show his right profile. He prefers to show his left profile. And I know for a fact that, whenever we shot him, it was always the preferred profile, which is his left. But the art director kept saying, Ronny, I want him because the layout is this way, right? So I want to see his right hand side of the face, and can you go and talk to him? So I go up to Sachin and it's like, Ron, you know me, man. We've been shooting 5-6 years. Nahi karunga main. I said, here's the deal. Just shoot one frame for me. You don't like it, we just turn back. There's no problem. So I shot it. He reluctantly agreed. But I think it was my lighting and that little moment again that I caught. And he saw the Polaroid. He said, let's go for it. So we shot. Client was very happy because I managed to convince Sachin. But here's the fun part. 2 weeks later, his manager calls me and says, Ron, those Boost pictures Sachin has liked a lot. Can you share some JPEGs or high-res files? I've already spoken to the client. He wants to use it for his signing purposes. So the picture that he signs off as, and I said, why? I thought he didn't like that angle. He said, no, he's loved it. So, sometimes you got to push even big people.
Yep.
And you got to believe in yourself also. I think that's important. Yeah.
So it's those getting into people's head, trying to get them out of that comfort zone.
Yeah.
That is also a great skill a photographer should have, right? And something which people, it's almost like building that relationship.
Yeah.
Getting into that comfort to be discomfortable, right? Or uncomfortable.
No, so, many times I can direct, right from a baby to regular models to old people. So my classic story is of Mr. Amitabh Bachan. We were shooting for Aircel, Save the Tiger. So the shot was very simple. We wanted him like growling at camera. So everything is set. He walks in and says, okay, what's my shot? I said, sir, I want you growling at camera like a tiger. He's saying, yeah, okay, show me. I was not expecting it, but I do my own growling. So I go up, I tell my assistant, go behind the camera, shoot. So I just gave him 2-3 rows. He said, wow, good. And he did the same thing. So I'm pretty sure he could have done it on his own. But the fact that I did it, boom, no questions, he did it.
Great. That's an interesting story.
Yeah,
I think he's my favorite star. So,
yeah.
you keep referring these words which you said, boys, bachas. So you are mentoring a lot of individuals today in your career. You do bring in, and this probably stems in as you saw Atul to mentor that, and that I'm sure you're imbibing as well. And
True.
you did mention that you don't care if they're learning from me. You did mention in this podcast.
Yeah.
What, first, couple of things is, let's say somebody wants to come and learn from you. How do they get to you? One. And if they come, what should they expect? And third is, what are your expectations towards them as you mentor them?
So I think it's very important after a certain stage in your career to give back, especially in professions like us, because we've learned so much, touch wood. So if today there are maybe a dozen or maybe more photographers who had worked with Atul, I am equally proud that equal number of guys out there doing work. In fact, 2 weeks back, one of my assistants who literally, is my favorite guy, Gaurav, he got married, and 2 days before he says, "Sir, I've bought a watch finally." Like, okay. So he sends me a picture of an Oris, and I go for the marriage, and he's first showing the watch to me. So it's a great feeling. It's not just photography, it's a lot of other things. I mean, I like watches, I like bikes, I like shoes.
Yep.
And then the kids, those guys also realize that, hey, these are the things that also matter, because, I mean, our professions are about, your image also, right? But I feel not just photography, a lot of other things like communication skills. So if a guy doesn't know English properly, I'll tell him, listen, make an effort to figure out your English. The 2 boys who are right now with me are not good with English. So I said, okay, Google something called Wren and Martin. They'd never heard of Wren and Martin. One of them has bought it. So all full power to him. The other guy is like, I don't care. It's okay. Then I also feel personal presentation. I definitely make an effort to dress up. Even if it's my basic, my uniform is a white t-shirt and blue jeans and New Balance shoes. But if I'm going out to a party or whatever, I will still, make an effort to look good. A lot of the guys don't realize it because they come from different backgrounds. But they evolve, and I've seen guys evolve. There's one assistant, another guy who's doing very well in the Instagram space called Mohit Varu. So if you saw Mohit Varu 6 years back or 7 years back whenever he came and he worked with me, this little boy from Sambalpur in Orissa. And if you see him today, he's the dude with like some 7 pairs of white shoes, and he's hanging out with like the best bloggers in India and stuff like that. Now, the guys who realize it early, and then they make an effort because they realize it's part of this whole profession. So that's personal presentation. And I also feel a lot of people don't have this ability to focus on a task, So if let's say there are 2 computers in my office and I'm talking to one guy and I've given him his instructions and he continues doing his work, I call that focus. But if I'm talking to the other guy and he turns around to see what I'm saying, I just find that pointless because, hey, you're doing this thing, focus on it, do it. So that comes in handy a lot when you're like shooting through the camera. If you're distracted and something is there, you had a fight with someone or whatever, you got to get that out. You got to say, hey, that's what I want to do today, and that's very important. I also believe it's your attitude, that makes a difference as to how far you go in your life. I use the word proactive a lot with my boys. So proactive, positive attitude. I tell my boys never to say no to me. I'm like, no, kyun bol raha? Nahi hoga, sir. It's pointless, So I actually tell them I don't want to hear a no from you. Simply because the fact that as soon as you say no, you're already putting yourself in a wrong space, on the back foot. So I feel it's your attitude that finally makes a difference. Photography is there. They will learn the photography. But if they learn the fact that, hey man, when I go out there, bosses send me for this, I got to sort this out, it's my problem. And that's how I try to train them. That's my mentoring space.
Great.
And regarding building a career, again, I would say it's the same things. You basically buy a great SLR or a decent SLR, a book, join a photography course, and assist someone whose work you admire, because if you don't do that assistantship, you think you're a photographer. So there are a lot of Instagram photographers who come up to me and they say, hey, sir, we like your work, ye, wo. But they come with a lot of attitude. And I'm like, listen, dude, if Instagram shuts today, tomorrow you'll die of depression because, you're only living on those likes. Nobody's paying you. Even this assistant of mine, Mohit, he makes a bit of money, travels the world, sometimes in France, sometimes in Japan. He's definitely enjoying his space. Is he making the money? No. So when I compare him with Gaurav, because both of them were there at the same time, Gaurav just dropped me a message saying, sir, my company crossed 40 lakhs last year. I'm like, full power to you. So it finally is about the money. You want to buy that flat in Bombay, you want to buy that car for yourself,
Yep.
or whatever it be, your toys at some point. You can't be saying, oh, my photography is creative, and but a lot of guys are caught up with that thing on Instagram. That's the problem with Instagram today.
You spoke about relationship, focus, and all of that. There's one thing which probably if I have to put myself, let's say if I have to start my career, getting in front of people whom you've admired always, or you look up on the screen, how do you get over that inertia of either interviewing or clicking Amitabh Bachan or Sachin Tendulkar, who've been at least for me, they are my idols in the TV or the screen life. How would you train somebody to get that inertia out?
So I think power of personality is very important there. So at some level, you as a person should be also decently confident. If you're underconfident, these professions are not for you. You can be chewed off. Yes, initially, so the first time I shot Sachin, I still remember it was a big high point, and it was great. It was a great moment also because Sachin was being shot by Atul in the same studio in the first shift, and we would come in the second shift with my production team. So I still remember Atul leaving and I coming in, and he's like, hey, all the best, ye wo. That was my first shoot.
Wow.
I was very, very under pressure. My art director was like, but Ron, I know you're going to do a good job. Actually, the thing was that I had already pre-decided my lighting as usual. And they had seen an image of mine which was exactly what they said, bingo, that's it. So it was actually a shot of Sachin in silhouette. So 2 lights from the edges and just his face. That was supposed to be a teaser campaign for ESPN Sports. When that picture came out, the number of likes that I got. Because afterwards we put a light on him and we exposed him. But everyone knew that was Sachin because of the way it was lit up. And I remember Atul calling me and saying, hey man, you fucking kicked it out of the boundary, right? You kicked you hit the ball out of the boundary. Because that was such a strong image. Till then no one had seen Sachin like that. It was just my luck or karma or whatever you call it. But of course I had shot a picture similar to that. So it also put me in great books with Sachin, because for him it's like, fuck, Ronny shot that image. And of course among my peers, my boss called me up to say. So post that, it was always a cakewalk with him. I'm still doing a good job. Similarly with Dhoni, I still remember he had long hair. They had come back from maybe it was before the World Cup. He had long hair and we shot with him for Titan Watches. And the pictures came out so good that was a benchmark for at least 2 years till he had his long hair.
Wow.
So then, you become friends after a while,
Yep.
Like I would consider Dhoni, John, Saif, friends at some levels because, we have similar interests of motorcycles, at least with John and Dhoni. Watches with Dhoni, which is quite strange. And something called air guns with Saif. So, yeah.
Wow. Okay. Very interesting. I think great. This has been a fun conversation. Something I've learned a lot from this conversation, Ronny. Some parting thoughts from your side to the listeners of, what's coming in for Ronny?
Oh, lots, man. 2 days back, I sent a message to a friend. Friend as in she's actually a professional, a fellow professional. So her dad runs an institute in Calcutta called IIP, International Institute of Photography. And I've gone there a couple of times as a guest lecturer. So they call me, I do a workshop the whole day and then I take off. He passed away sadly about 2 weeks back, and I had sent a condolence message. And her reply comes back saying, Ronny, I'm in 2 minds what to do with the institute. So my reaction was, girl, you're going to hold on. You're going to do what your dad did and take it forward. And her next reply was, I need your help here. So for me, my next stage is going and meeting Purnasha, saying, hey, how can we... I'm definitely not going to go and settle in Calcutta, but I'll be more involved with the institute. So teaching is the next big thing for me. I think I make a good teacher, because not just the photography, it's also the other aspects. So I'm going to get very proactively involved with that teaching space in Calcutta. Again, 3 days back, very randomly, I get a call from another producer friend of mine saying, hey man, I want you to direct a video for a jewelry client, and will you do it? I said, yeah, why not? Because right now I'm ready. I'm starting to use the gimbal and stuff like that. And I'd already shot some video of PC Chandra, which I had to just cut. So today I'm going for the edit for that. So photography is happening, but with photography, how can I go forward? There's the teaching with IIP. I'm getting into video. And for me, video is just a transition, because as soon as I say mentally that I'm good to go, I don't shoot the video. I'll get a DOP who will do it. But he has to connect with me, he has to be with my vision. Then there are also little aspects which, you don't think are what a commercial photographer will do. But I know that there is a sizable amount of money to be made, is doing family portraits. I'm very good with it. So every once in a while we have a party, I shoot some nice black and whites, and the people cherish it. So what I've been doing is making prints and giving them, and invariably go to the house and it's sitting there. So I know that transition also will happen. If I shoot some 25, 30 friends of mine with their families, the pictures sitting in a wall, people will want to get that, because that's something which is not happening in India right now. Abroad, it's a big thing. People pay serious money for those portraits. So I'm looking at that also. So yeah, other than my commercial photography, there's a lot of things lined up. So all excited.
Thanks a lot, Ronny, for doing this.
Thank you, Anis. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks a lot for this conversation. Really
Great,
appreciate
man.
it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for listening in. And we close yet another episode of Masters Decoded. If you've enjoyed the episode, please, you can help us out by sharing it on social media. I would personally appreciate that. It's how we can reach more listeners, and the more listeners we have, the more awesome guests I can get in touch and convince to participate in these conversations that are a joy to have for me, and I hope they are a joy for you to listen as well. You can also help a lot leaving reviews on iTunes or your podcast service of choice. Reviews are surprisingly helpful in supporting the podcast to get to more listeners. If this episode has intrigued you, I would request you to subscribe to the podcast to stay up to date and get notified to the future episodes. With that, I bid you and see you in the next episode.